Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar, The 5 Habits of Highly Effective Accounts Payable Departments. Today's webinar is sponsored by Corcentric. I'm your speaker for today, Mark Brousseau. I'm the Managing Director of Advisory Services for the Institute of Finance and Management. Today's webinar is going to be recorded. You'll get an on-demand version of the webinar at the conclusion. If you have any questions during today's webinar, we invite you to use the question and answer box on your screen. Send them to us electronically. We'll answer them at the end of the webinar. If we don't get a chance to answer your question, we'll do it after the conclusion of the webinar. We all want to be the best, especially when it comes to today's highly competitive business environment. The question is, how do we do it? How do we achieve best-in-class results in our accounts payable departments? And that's the focus of today's webinar. We're going to show you what it is that separates best-in-class accounts payable organizations from their also-run peers. We're going to provide you with the 5 habits of highly effective accounts payable departments. And we're going to show you how your organization can start to put those habits into practice in your daily processing. So let's start with what it is that separates best-in-class accounts payable departments from their peers. What is it you need to do to become a best-in-class accounts payable department? Well, according to benchmark data, there's really 3 things that set the leaders apart from their peers. The first is their level of efficiency, and we know in accounts payable it can be a highly inefficient, highly ineffective function. So improving efficiency is a reasonable expectation for best-in-class results. Secondly, its approaches to AP automation. It's not enough to operate in an efficient manual environment or even in a semi-automated environment. What organizations need today is to strive for electronic, touchless invoice processing. And that's what best-in-class organizations have done. And finally, manual versus automated cost implications have a big sway in terms of separating leaders from their peers. So what are some key benchmarks that you should look for to determine where you are in your journey toward becoming a best-in-class accounts payable organization? Well, obviously the first one is in terms of invoice processing costs. And when it comes to invoice processing costs, best-in-class organizations process at significantly lower rates than their peers. In fact, IOFM benchmarking data says that best-in-class organizations spend less than 1/4 of what it costs their peers to process a single invoice. Now, of all the data I'm going to provide you today, this is the one I want you to take with a grain of salt. Not because the data is inaccurate, but because it's not indicative of the entire pool of AP organizations. We know that 40% of all IOFM members don't track their invoice processing costs. Perhaps you're one of those organizations. And if you don't track your costs, I guarantee you they're a whole lot higher than you think they are. So while we hear that $8.78 is indicative of folks with a low level of automation, I'm here to tell you that I regularly encounter organizations who are spending $25 or more to process a single invoice. And those organizations aren't necessarily baked into these numbers. So it's reasonable to think that you're going to be farther ahead of your peers if you're highly automated. What's more, it's not uncommon to find highly automated accounts payable organizations that are spending less than $1.77 to process a single invoice, particularly those with a high percentage of PO-based invoices that arrive electronically as electronic invoices. Now, to give you some idea of how big an impact low invoice processing costs can have in your organization, take this model that we did. Using IOFM's benchmark data, if you process 5,000 invoices per month, you're spending about $64,500 in a manual accounts payable operation. Well, in a highly automated operation, it's going to cost you less than $9,000 to process the same 5,000 invoices. That's a savings of 85%. That seems awfully big. But the fact of the matter is that organizations are saving even more when they move to an electronic invoicing environment where a high percentage of the invoices are posted to the ERP straight through without human operator intervention. Think it's hard to believe? Many organizations are able to post more than 90% of their invoices straight through as a result of electronic invoicing. One of those reasons for the low invoice processing costs is the high productivity that's afforded by a high level of automation. In fact, organizations that are highly automated are able to process more than 10 times as many invoices per FTE compared to their less automated peers. What's more, if you combine a high level of automation with a high percentage of PO-based invoices, now you're going to achieve an increase in productivity of 12x or more. These are startling numbers. Think about what your team can accomplish if it were to free up that much time. You'd be able to focus them on value-added activities, such as supplier relations, cleaning up the vendor master database, moving more suppliers to electronic payments, performing data analysis, the things your CFO cares about. These are the things that happen at best-in-class organizations because of their high level of productivity. What's more, organizations with a high level of automation are able to process significantly higher percentages of their invoices paid on time. This has tremendous implications, not only in your department, but across the enterprise. You're going to pay fewer late payment penalties. You're going to capture more early payment discounts, which in turn is going to lower your cost of goods. You're going to have fewer supplier inquiries, which means stronger supplier relationships, potentially a lower cost of goods again. And you're going to have better visibility into where you stand with your financials, which is going to provide benefits to your senior management. And all of this can be accomplished with high levels of automation, as well as with a high percentage of PO-based invoices. As I suggested on our previous slide, best-in-class organizations, those with a high level of automation, are capturing significantly higher percentages of early payment discounts. We know that 80% of suppliers are willing to exchange a discount on the invoice due amount for earlier payment. They have cash flow needs just like every other organization. And if they're a mid-market or small business, chances are that they're struggling with their cash. Banks typically aren't giving them all the money they're looking for. And in many cases, they go wanting to family and friends for money. Well, there's no better way to attract and retain valued suppliers than to offer them a solution to that cash crisis vis-a-vis early payment discounts. 70% of CFOs want to capture more early payment discount opportunities. And the key word there is opportunities. They're not going to take advantage of every one that comes in the door, but they want that opportunity. And in many cases, organizations with a low level of automation are literally leaving money laying on the table. The reason? They can't process the invoices fast enough to allow for a meaningful window for early payment discounts. And so it's no surprise that organizations that are best in class are capturing more early payment discounts than their peers. So we look at high processing costs, poor staff productivity, errors like the approval cycles, lost discounts. A lot of this comes back to the fact that we're processing invoices in a manual or semi-automated environment. Let's face it, paper invoice processing is the pits. And so if you want to move to a best-in-class operation, you need to find ways to address that reality. And the first habit of best-in-class organizations is that they're doing something about those paper invoices. They're automating their invoice capture. We know that today, invoices are arriving in organizations, not just as paper, but also as email, uploads, electronic invoices, fax, web entry. They're coming in myriad channels. And this is creating some complexity, particularly for those of you in a manual or semi-automated environment. You need to find a way to capture, normalize the processing of those invoices, regardless of how they enter your organization. One way to do that is using scan and capture technology. This is intelligent data capture. It starts with automatically scanning documents to digitize them and sort them electronically, determine which one's a PO versus an invoice versus a correspondence versus an order, and then to extract data automatically from that document based on business rules that you've established for that specific document. So in the case of an invoice, you're likely going to want to capture the invoice number, its date, the amount, the vendor, PO, maybe some line item data as well. Next, you're going to validate that data. So just as you would in a manual environment, you want to make sure it's the data that you're looking for, so you can validate discrepancies and clean up data automatically so a human doesn't intervene. This allows you to post those invoices cleanly to your ERP. Now, there's a number of approaches to scan and capture. Traditionally, folks have gone out and bought scanners with expensive software licenses and internally scanned their documents and captured this information. Invariably, this was a long deployment cycle with a long return on investment, if ever. And the reason is that in this kind of an environment, in this internal scan and OCR environment, you have to start with a big investment in equipment. Scanners, for crying out loud, take up a lot of space, make a lot of noise, create a lot of dust, require upkeep. Oh my gosh, another thing to take care of in our operations. You also have to pay maintenance for them. And if they break, now you've got interruptions. You also have to train your staff to make sure they understand how to work the scanner, work the software. And if there's any misreads to the data that comes off those invoices, well, you're correcting them. Your staff has to key them. And in many cases, those discrepancies might be complex. So this means that you're not just keeping workers, you're keeping your knowledge workers. Your most expensive staff have to be dedicated to this system. And at the end of the day, you're still receiving and managing paper. What's more, this makes you wonder, where are we in our move to paperless? Well, a better approach is SaaS outsourcing. In this environment, you offload the scanning and OCR. So now, there's no investment in equipment or software licenses. There's no maintenance costs. There's no chance of equipment interruptions. There's no training to your staff. There's no exceptions for your team to validate. Most importantly, there's no more paper for you to manage. Scan and capture in a SaaS environment helps you offload and digitize those documents to start on your way to achieving best-in-class results. Another way to digitize your documents is through electronic invoicing. This notion of an electronic invoice generated by the billing system of your supplier that flows electronically through your processes to your ERP. No paper involved. One way to do that is with a supplier network. You essentially join a network with your suppliers that facilitates the exchange of invoices and other payables documents. It allows for easy electronic onboarding, makes it simple for your suppliers to submit invoices, to see where they stand, and for you to communicate with them on any potential discrepancies. Over time, you're going to get significant uptake, as this chart suggests. Now, it's probably not going to solve all of your invoicing needs. There'll be those suppliers that are still going to submit invoices as paper, and that's why you still need a SaaS outsourcing approach to scan and capture as well. So how is it best-in-class organizations are capturing invoices? Well, first and foremost, they're heavy users of document imaging and scanning. They're using intelligent data capture. What's more, they're using electronic invoicing in conjunction with that. so that they have an answer for all of their invoices that might arrive in their organization. And when those invoices are digitized, they're using automated routing and approval to move them along the way. And we're seeing much greater numbers of organizations using that data capture technology. So if you're one of those organizations that are still scanning your invoices on the front end, or God forbid on the back end, why bother? They're now having a better approach. Instead of keying, you can capture that data automatically. The second habit of highly efficient accounts payable organizations is that they automate approval and exceptions workflows. We know this is a priority of accounts payable departments. And the reason is that your workflows probably look like this. You have POs, invoices, and other documents moving every which way. In many organizations, we don't know who the purchaser is. We don't know where an invoice stands in the approval process. And when we have an exception, well, that typically kicks off a 2 to 4 week process with emails and phone calls going back and forth, trying to find information and sort out what's going on. In many cases, accounts payable has to play traffic cop. We have to nag people to respond to our invoice inquiries. And at the end of the day, this creates an environment that takes too long, costs too much, creates too many errors, and provides far too little visibility. And this is a big problem for organizations, because when you don't have efficient workflows, well, you're invariably going to have a backlog of past due invoices. This costs you money, late payments, as well as missed early payment discounts. You're also going to have lots of phone calls from your suppliers. They have those cash flow needs. They want to know where their money stands. What's more, it's nearly impossible to rectify your cash flow in this kind of environment. You simply don't know what's in the pipe or where it's going to stand. And so we can never give the CFO a good answer on where we are with our cash. So a better approach is to digitize our workflows, those for approvals as well as exceptions, to set up business rules for how it is we want specific invoices for specific suppliers with specific scenarios, such as high dollar transactions, to be handled. And these rules will have automatic alerts, notifications, and escalation procedures, so we can be assured that the right invoice always ends up in the right hands. And if it's not responded to fast enough, it moves on so that it's not held up. We all know the case where an invoice sits in somebody's inbox on their desk, and they happen to be out of the office on business or PTO. And what happens? Nothing. We don't know where it stands. And so we email, we fax, we phone, and we just don't know where things stand. All the while your suppliers are breathing down your neck. So electronic workflows help resolve these issues. And it does it in an environment that uses numbered tools. As I said, you're going to establish predefined business rules for how you want specific invoices and specific invoice scenarios handled. You're going to have automated delegation of authority approval. We can also have separation of duties. All of this allows for straight-through processing so that we never have to handle paper invoices again. Exceptions, they're going to be handled in an automated environment, both internally as well as externally. In electronic invoicing, we're able to provide a portal to communicate and collaborate with our suppliers. Notifications, alerts, escalation procedures, they'll assure us that we're not going to have held up invoices. What's more, the solution to invoice approval and exceptions handling might be in the palm of your hand. Mobile approval allows those on-the-go users to be able to stay in touch, no longer be tethered to a PC. So whether they're in an airport, a home office, or on the golf course, they're able to pull up a list of new invoices, to see the data on them, to approve them, to see past invoice and payment history. All of this accelerates cycle times, allows you to avoid late payments, and capture more early payment discounts. And this also provides you with automated system-level controls. Now you're able to have the ability to automatically comply with internal audit policies and SOX. There's no more paper. In a paper environment, it's like the Wild West. We can never be sure where that document is or whose eyes or hands have laid upon it. You're able to automatically check for duplicate invoices, validate user-level approvals, and get a visibility across the entire invoice lifecycle. This is as valuable for managers as it is for our frontline staff. It keeps things moving. The third habit of highly effective accounts payable departments is that they pay suppliers electronically. Today, 59% of payments are initiated electronically. I know that surprises some of you. For years, we heard the businesses were the last holdouts and the push away from inefficient, costly, and fraudulent paper checks. Well, that's no more. Today, we're seeing businesses embrace electronic payments like never before. And the reason is, well, there's many. Obviously, there's lower payment costs. ACH and card transactions cost a small fraction of what it costs to process a check. What's more, in an electronic payments environment, we can have configurable payment approval workflows so we can help root out some of that fraud and compliance risk. We have greater visibility into your cash position as well as the status of payments. And the status of payments is beneficial not only to you, but as well as your suppliers. And that helps strengthen supplier relationships. And yes, electronic payments can help transform accounts payable into a profit center, vis-a-vis cashback rebates on spend made via a card. And in many cases, I've heard of organizations that are completely paying for their staff's overhead based on those card rebates. So it's no surprise that 55% of organizations now make more than half of their B2B payments electronically. 54% of organizations view ACH as their preferred B2B payment method. And 43% of organizations now regularly look to earn cashback rebates. If you want to become a best-in-class accounts payable organization, you need to stop printing paper checks. And the best part is your suppliers want you to pay them electronically. One of the biggest misnomers in this industry is that suppliers won't go for electronic payments. 80% of suppliers want to increase the percentage of electronic payments and electronic remittances that they receive from their customers. And the reason is simple. They're easier to deal with in their accounts receivable environment. They have the same issues we do with paper. So they want to receive electronic transactions. What's more, it helps them with their cash flow so they can know when they're going to get paid, so they can see it coming into their bank account. It's easier to reconcile, easier to report on, and there's less chance it'll be intercepted or lost. One of the biggest reasons suppliers call us in accounts payable is because of lost checks. The fourth habit of highly effective accounts payable departments is that they take a holistic approach to procure to pay. It's not enough anymore, people, just to automate invoice processing. Today, the table stakes are that you'll have automated AP. What organizations are striving for is the ability to automate the procure to pay life cycle from procurement and order management through accounts payable and payments into supplier management and spend management. They want visibility across the P2P life cycle. They want the ability to be able to have efficiencies across the P2P life cycle, root out errors, provide better reporting. All of this puts new power into the hands of organizations. We know the supplier issues can result in supply chain and cash problems. Organizations recognize this, but they also recognize that if they're able to automate the P2P life cycle, this is going to give them greater leverage with their suppliers. They'll know who they're spending money with. They'll know what they're buying. They'll know whether it's in line with the contracts that they've signed. They'll be able to direct purchases to preferred suppliers. They'll be able to get better negotiating power when it's time to renegotiate contracts. And they'll know at any point in time where they stand with their spending. And so what we find is this is having a big impact on accounts payable departments. So if you're pretending that you don't know what's going on in procurement, or you just don't want to know, I got news for you. You better rethink that strategy. 75% of best-in-class accounts payable organizations now have some strategic responsibility for managing real-time supplier inquiries and requests. They're on the front line of dealing with suppliers. 62% of best-in-class accounts payable organizations have some strategic responsibility for managing a vendor master file. And 40% of best-in-class accounts payable organizations are actively involved in sourcing. So today we're seeing this convergence of accounts payable and procurement. We're seeing them come together for P2P automation. The risk is if you bury your head in the sand and you pretend that these things don't apply to you, the procurement's going to go off and they're going to do their own thing. And this will have a big impact on you. So if we're able to better coordinate AP and P2P, this allows the organization to increase access to supplier discounts, reduce risk from volatile supply chain activities. It's going to provide better working capital. It's going to lower your costs across the P2P life cycle. You're going to end up with tighter bonds internally as well as externally with your suppliers, and you're going to have untold reporting power in the palm of your hand. And the fifth habit of highly effective accounts payable departments is that they deliver value to the enterprise. For too long, accounts payable has been the quintessential tactical back office function. Well, no more. Over the next 3 years, the majority of accounts payable practitioners surveyed by IOFM expect that their departments can become slightly or significantly more strategically important to their organization. One of the reasons is the ability to generate revenue out of accounts payable. One way organizations are doing that is through early payment discounts. We know that when you're in a highly efficient accounts payable department, you're able to capture more discounts. And those discounts allow your organization to lower its cost of goods, to create better bonds with its suppliers. What's more, when you combine the improvements from working capital that you can get in accounts payable with the benefits of invoice processing automation, now you're able to achieve benefits worth 5, 6, or 7 times or more than just invoice processing automation on its own. This has a big impact on AP's standing in the organization. So over the next several years, accounts payable practitioners anticipate that they're going to see more demand from their enterprise for the data that flows through AP. They expect that they're going to become more collaborative with departments, not only just procurement, but also finance, treasury, the C-suite, and elsewhere. Organizations want to use that data to help inform their strategic decisions of the business. So it's clear that if you want to become a best-in-class accounts payable organization, you need to become highly automated. You need to become efficient, automated, and lower cost to the organization. Now the question is, how the heck do I do that? Today I'm sitting, Mark, on paper-based processing, where it's entirely paper-based. I'm manually indexing files in my file cabinets. I've got manual keying, manual workflows. I'm on the phone all day dealing with suppliers, and my reporting is via an Excel spreadsheet. Well, the steps today provide you with a roadmap. First, you want to become image-enabled. You want to start digitizing those paper invoices. You want to be able to capture information and apply automated workflows, not only for approvals, but also for exceptions handling. Then you want to move toward electronic invoicing, where you use imaging, EDI, e-invoicing, email with very little paper. And you're automatically indexing information, and you're providing a self-service portal so we can collaborate with stakeholders internally and externally. And then finally, you want to become paper-free. For accounts payable organizations, nirvana is electronic processing in a touchless environment. Now, some of you might be interpreting these levels as being mutually exclusive, and that's not the case at all. I don't want you to think for one moment that you only do one of these at a time. The best approach is to combine these technologies. Find a solutions provider who can offer you technologies that allow you to address all of your invoices, whether they arrive as paper or electronic, and provide you with a roadmap to moving to a paper-free environment. So how is it we're going to get senior management to buy in on this? How are we going to sell them on this idea that we can become best in class if only we become efficient and automated? Well, first, you want to detail how it is P2P improvements will help the organization reduce costs, improve efficiency and effectiveness. Put it in terms that the CFO cares about. You're going to provide them with current metrics, and you're going to detail the costs to improve those measures. The CFOs in your organization, they care about working capital measures. So point out the percentage of early payment discounts you currently miss as a result of your inefficient processes. Show them how they can get better visibility through automation. Show them how you can strengthen supplier relationships and lower your cost of goods. Show them the costs of paper checks versus electronic payments. And then you're going to spell out a comparative ROI. Show them where you stand today, and then provide them with an aggressive as well as a conservative estimate on where you'll be with your return on investment. Show them a roadmap for how it is that your organization can become best in class, not middling, but can lead its peers. And that will get your CFO excited about automation. Why? Because all the while, their mandate as the CFO is to help the business get ahead of its competitors. And the finance department can be an engine for helping the business do just that. The improvements you achieve by becoming a best-in-class accounts payable organization act as the fuel to allow your business to grow, to drive revenues, to innovate, to expand globally. I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar. If you have any questions about the topics we discussed today, I invite you to email my friends at Corcentric. Their email and phone numbers on the screen. Let them show you how it is their technology can help you become a highly effective accounts payable department. On behalf of Corcentric, this is Mark Brousseau. Thank you again for joining us. I hope to speak with you all again soon.